Going to court in connection with any civil action is a very bad idea, as the only function of a court is to judge between two parties who disagree and then penalize the loser. The court doesn't care who wins or loses, and the objective of the court is to make a profit for its owners, as it is a commercial enterprise and its purpose is to acquire money from anybody who is foolish enough to attend. If you look at the summons, which is really an invitation to go to court, you will see that it is not in your name, but in the name of the straw man which they are hoping to fool you into representing. Dealing with debt. Because of the very high percentage of the money earned being taken away from the average person, it is not unusual for people to end up with what looks like debt. Most people spend their time worrying over the statement of what they are told they owe, and do endless calculations to see if they agree with the numbers which they have been sent. Again, this is the sort of misdirection which magicians use to fool audiences, distracting their attention away from where the action is really taking place. Here, the question is really not, how much is owed? But instead is anything actually owed? You need to remember that any financial institution is a legal fiction and does not actually exist. As a result of this, it can only deal with other legal fictions, essentially, other pieces of paper. And it can't have any dealings with a man or a woman, as they are not legal fictions. It is also important to understand what passes for money nowadays. Let's say our trusty friend James Martin goes looking for a loan and he fills out an application form with the Swindle Bank, Inc. for $10,000. Interestingly, the form which he is asked to sign says that he has already received the $10,000, although the loan has not yet been approved. The next day, the loan is approved and James is handed a check which he is asked to sign and deposit to his account with the bank. We won't follow up on that very interesting procedure at this time, but please remember that he has now provided 2 signatures for $10,000 in the strawman name, and all he has received is a 1 and 4 zeros in the accounts of the Swindle Bank. All goes well for several months until James loses his job and does not manage to get another one. This is financial trouble which he does not know how to deal with. Time goes by and James has not had sufficient money to make payments against his loan from the Swindle Bank, Inc. He starts getting letters from the bank saying that he must pay the arrears immediately and keep up with the payments in future. There is not the slightest chance of that happening, as James just does not have the money and he does not know what to do. Fortunately, Peter, the next-door neighbor of James, happens to be an independent financial advisor with years of experience, and James has the idea of asking him for help. Peter is willing to help, and so he sits down and goes through all of the paperwork. Then he tells James, "You must not ignore this situation. Write back immediately and say that you agree to pay any financial obligation which you might lawfully owe, on the condition that they provide 1. Validation of the debt, that is, the actual accounting. 2. Verification of their claim against you, that is, a signed invoice. 3. A copy of the contract binding both parties, you and them, in a letter by certified mail, so that there is an independent witness to it having been delivered. Every letter you write should be marked clearly, without prejudice, which means that you reserve all your lawful rights and you accept no contract unless it is shown to be lawful by meeting the 4 essential conditions to a lawful binding contract, namely 1. Full disclosure. You were not told that you were actually creating the credit with your wet ink signature. 2. Equal consideration. They brought nothing of value to the table and so had nothing to lose. 3. Lawful terms and conditions. Yours were based on fraud. 4. The wet ink signatures of both parties. Corporations can't sign because they have no right or mind to contract, since they are soulless legal fictions. And furthermore, no third party can sign a contract on their behalf. Peter then tells James that agreeing to pay, provided that evidence of a lawful debt can be produced, stops him being taken to court, because courts only adjudicate between parties who are in dispute, and as James has agreed to pay, there is no dispute, so the court would not accept any application for a hearing. If the Swindle Bank were foolish enough to try, James has only to send the court a copy of his letter agreeing to pay, and the case would be thrown out, dismissed, immediately, and the bank might well be penalized for wasting the court's time. The bank is now in trouble, as it has been running a con game on James and so can't produce the documents for which James has asked. The request by James was reasonable in every respect. However, a loan agreement is a contract, and so there has to be full disclosure of all the details, which there wasn't. Both sides have to put up something of equal worth, which didn't happen, and the contract has to be signed in wet ink by both parties, which the bank can't do. So the bank has a real problem. The bank will probably send a statement of what it wants James to believe is the outstanding amount. James should return this with a polite note saying that a statement is not an invoice, so would they please provide a signed invoice, as requested. They will also probably send a photocopy of his loan application form, at which point James should write back and point out politely that it does not constitute a contract as it is only signed by one of the parties, himself, and he has asked for a copy of the contract signed by both parties.